You can feel it before you can explain it. The silence around your life begins to change. A message arrives from someone you did not expect. A door opens in a place you had already stopped knocking. A person returns after you finally made peace with their absence. Something in your chest becomes alert, not afraid exactly, but awake, as if your soul has heard footsteps before your ears have. This is where many believers panic. They think sudden movement means disorder, or that if Allah wanted something for them, it would arrive slowly, gently, with every detail explained in advance. But sometimes Allah sends a person, an opportunity, a warning, or a test so suddenly that you cannot prepare your image, your speech, your emotions, or your plan. You only have what is already inside you. That is why the quiet seasons mattered. That is why the long waiting, the unanswered messages, the repeated disappointments, the lonely prayers at night, the restraint you practiced when nobody praised you, all of it was not empty time. It was preparation without applause. When life starts moving quickly, the question is not whether you feel ready. The question is whether your heart has learned to turn toward Allah before it turns toward fear. Because sudden arrivals reveal the condition of a person. They show whether you chase everything that excites you, reject everything that scares you, or pause long enough to ask, "My Lord, if this is good for my deen and my life, bring it with peace. And if it is harm dressed beautifully, turn it away without breaking me." There are moments when Allah withholds movement for so long that you begin to think nothing is happening. Then suddenly everything begins speaking at once. You may spend months applying, praying, trying, and hearing nothing. Then one morning a message comes from someone offering a path you did not even know was still possible. You may spend years healing from a person's absence, training yourself not to check their name, not to replay their words, not to build fantasies around their return. Then suddenly they appear again with softness in their voice and unfinished history in their hands. You may carry a private dua so quietly that even your closest friends do not know the full ache behind it. Then a small opening appears, not dramatic, not cinematic, just real enough to disturb your sleep. This suddenness is a test because it touches the exact place where patience was formed. If you waited with bitterness, you may grab without discernment. If you waited with desperation, you may confuse attention with mercy. If you waited with tawakkul, you will still feel emotion, but emotion will not become your master. You will breathe before you answer. You will pray before you decide. You will notice whether this new arrival brings you closer to Allah or makes you careless with Him. The believer does not need to be cold, suspicious, or closed-hearted, but the believer cannot afford to be spiritually asleep. When life becomes active again, some doors open as risk, some doors open as examination, some doors open only to show you that you no longer belong in rooms you once begged to enter. The difficult part is that not everything Allah sends will feel comfortable, and not everything that feels comfortable is sent for your benefit. Sometimes a person arrives with kindness, consistency, and respect, and your heart resists them only because you are used to chaos. Sometimes an opportunity appears after a long dry season, and instead of gratitude, you feel fear because stability is unfamiliar. Other times something enters your life with excitement, attention, and promises, but your prayers become rushed, your boundaries become weak, and your inner peace begins to thin out. That is when basira, spiritual sight, becomes more important than emotional speed. You may receive a call that sounds perfect on the surface, but after hanging up, you feel a heaviness you cannot ignore. You may be invited into a partnership, a relationship, a move, or a conversation, and everyone around you says, "This is amazing," while something inside you keeps whispering, "Slow down." A believer learns not to worship every feeling, but also not to crush every warning. There is a difference between fear from old wounds and unease from Allah's protection. Fear usually makes you frantic, defensive, and confused. A warning often comes with a strange clarity, a quiet refusal in the heart, a sense that stepping back is obedience, even when you cannot yet explain it. If this truth has touched something you have lived through, let a like rest on this video as a small witness to the fact that you are learning to slow down before Allah, not just react before people. One of the clearest signs of maturity is what you do in the first few minutes after sudden news reaches you. The old version of you might have replied immediately. accepted quickly, defended yourself loudly, or built an entire future from one message. The more disciplined version of you pauses. You place the phone face down. You make wudu if you can. You pray 2 quiet rak'ahs, not because you expect a voice from the sky, but because you refuse to make a decision while your nafs is leading the meeting. You ask Allah for clarity. Then you watch. Does this person respect your slower pace, or do they pressure you? Does this opportunity require you to abandon your values, or does it simply require courage? Does this return from the past come with accountability or only nostalgia? Does the door opening bring more prayer into your day, or does it make you feel too busy for the one who opened it? This is where suddenness becomes mercy, because it exposes that long thinking sometimes hides. A person who only wants access to your weakness may become impatient with your patience. A door that is not clean may start demanding secrecy, compromise, or haste. A test that looks like rejection may actually prevent you from giving your heart to what would have drained your faith slowly. Allah's protection does not always arrive as a wall. Sometimes it arrives as delay, discomfort, missing enthusiasm, unanswered calls, or a calm inability to move forward no matter how attractive the offer appears. There is also the sudden opportunity, the one that arrives after you have almost made peace with being unseen. Someone contacts you about work, study, marriage, travel, collaboration, or help. You stare at the message longer than necessary because part of you wants to celebrate, and another part remembers how many times hope became disappointment. This is where tawakkul becomes practical. Trusting Allah does not mean you say yes to everything with a religious phrase on your tongue. It means you take the next responsible step without letting fear or greed distort your judgment. You ask questions, you read the details, you consult someone wise, you pray istikhara. You look at the character of the people involved, not only the beauty of the offer. You check whether the path requires dishonesty, neglect of obligations, hidden relationships, arrogance, or a lifestyle that slowly hardens your heart. If the door is good, your carefulness will not ruin it. What is written for you will not need you to become reckless in order to receive it. And if the door closes because you refuse to compromise, then perhaps what looked like loss was Allah protecting the part of you that still knows how to bow. The world often teaches people to move fast so they do not miss out. Faith teaches you to move awake, because missing something harmful is also mercy. Many believers only understand this later, after they see what happened to those who rushed through the same opening without asking what it would cost their soul. The unease of the heart deserves its own honesty. There may be a moment when everything looks normal, but something inside you refuses to settle. A person's words are polite, but their consistency is missing. An invitation sounds harmless, but it pulls you toward an environment where your discipline weakens. A conversation seems innocent, but you notice yourself hiding it, justifying it, or protecting it from sincere advice. That is when you step back, not dramatically, not with accusations, not by declaring people toxic, but by creating distance long enough to hear yourself before Allah. You may say, "I need time to think." You may delay a reply. You may stop feeding a connection that keeps making you spiritually restless. You may accept that no one else sees what you see yet, and still choose restraint. This is not superiority. It is responsibility. Leave a comment with one specific answer. What was one moment when stepping back gave you clarity that rushing would have destroyed? That question matters because many people only recognize Allah's protection after the urgency fades. At the time, restraint can feel like losing momentum. Later, it feels like being saved from a version of yourself that was about to ignore every sign. Sabr is not passive waiting while life happens to you. Sometimes sabr is holding your own hand back from the reply, the meeting, the argument, the purchase, the confession, the return, until your heart is calm enough to distinguish desire from direction. But be careful, because spiritual alertness is not paranoia. Not everyone who enters your life suddenly is a threat. Not everyone who challenges you is an enemy. Not every uncomfortable conversation is a sign to run. There are people Allah sends who will not flatter your ego, but they will help your soul stand straighter. They may correct you gently. They may reveal a blind spot. They may ask you to be more honest, more consistent, more responsible. At first, your pride may call them difficult, but later your heart may recognize them as mercy. A friend who tells you you are slipping in your prayers may feel intrusive in the moment, but that sentence may save you from months of quiet distance from Allah. A teacher, employer, spouse, sibling, or stranger may arrive with words that bruise your comfort but awaken your conscience. This is why you cannot judge every arrival by whether it soothes you. Some people bring ease, and that ease is mercy. Some people bring friction, and that friction is purification. The measure is not whether they make your life instantly pleasant. The measure is whether their presence pushes you toward truth without pulling you away from Allah. There is a difference between someone who wounds you to control you and someone whose honesty hurts because it interrupts your self-deception. The chosen path, if we can even use that word with humility, is not about being admired or protected from every discomfort. It is about being trained to recognize what Allah is showing you without turning every feeling into a verdict. A person may return into your life at the exact moment you have stopped waiting, and that is one of the most delicate tests. When you were checking for them, longing for them, hoping they would understand, their silence felt like a locked door. Then you learned to live without their apology. You stopped shaping your days around their absence. You gave their matter to Allah because carrying it was making your heart tired. Then, suddenly, they come back. Maybe they send a simple message. I hope you're well. Maybe they speak as if no years passed. Maybe they carry regret, or maybe they only carry loneliness. This is where you must not let old hunger answer before present wisdom. Their return may be a chance for closure, forgiveness, reconciliation, or a lesson in boundaries. It may also be a mirror showing you how far Allah has brought you. You read their words and notice something astonishing. The old ache is not ruling you. You are not shaking the way you once would have. You do not need to punish them, impress them, or prove that you survived. You can reply with dignity, or you can remain silent with peace. That is not weakness. That is Allah freeing you from the need to reopen every door just because someone knocked. Sometimes divine timing means a person returns only after your attachment to them has died. So you can choose from clarity instead of need. And sometimes the test is not whether they come back, but whether you still abandon yourself when they do. Still, do not make the mistake of demanding perfect certainty before you obey what is already clear. Some believers use, I am waiting for a sign, as a way to avoid the responsibility of what they already know. They ask Allah for guidance, but when guidance arrives through discomfort, counsel, repeated patterns, or a door becoming heavy, they keep reopening the question because the answer hurts. A person who repeatedly disrespects your boundaries does not become safe because they arrive suddenly with softer language. An opportunity that requires you to lie does not become blessed because it appears during a difficult financial season. A path that consistently pulls you away from prayer does not become guidance because it brings excitement. At the same time, a good thing may still scare you. A clean opportunity may still require effort. A sincere person may still trigger old wounds. So, the believer must learn balance. You do not reject everything because you are afraid, and you do not accept everything because you are tired of waiting. You watch patterns, you listen to counsel, you examine your own motives, you ask whether your prayer is increasing or shrinking, you notice whether your character becomes softer or more secretive. Allah's guidance often becomes clearer after you stop arguing with the first layer of truth. It may not come as a dramatic certainty. It may come as a steady narrowing of the path until only the honest next step remains. When Allah moves things suddenly, the believer's strength is not in controlling the speed of events. It is in remaining spiritually present while events move. You may not have time to fix your whole life before the person arrives. The offer appears. The warning becomes obvious, or the test knocks at your door. But you can be ready in the ways that matter. You can keep your prayers alive, so panic does not become your first language. You can practice truthfulness in small matters, so a sudden opportunity does not tempt you into a lie. You can forgive without becoming available for repeated harm. You can love without handing your judgment to longing. You can walk away from provocation without needing everyone to know how much restraint it took. You can notice when an old emotional trigger no longer controls you and quietly thank Allah for growth no one else witnessed. This is the hidden training of the believer. The world may only see the sudden moment, the message, the return, the opening, the decision. Allah saw the nights before it. When you were learning to master your tongue, lower your gaze, calm your anger, make dua without theatrics, and accept delays without accusing your Lord. So, when they arrive suddenly, whoever or whatever they are, do not panic, do not worship the arrival, and do not fear it. Stand with adab before Allah, ask for clarity, watch the fruit, move with humility. What is meant to nourish you will not require you to abandon Him, and what is removed from you was never stronger than the one who removed it.